So is it no pain, no gain? You have American companies really starting to feel the impact of the president's trade policies. Tariff collections topping $5 billion in October. New numbers that were cited in a Wall Street Journal this morning. Edward Lawrence had even more updated figures a few minutes ago. And, you know, if you were watching yesterday, the CEO of U.S. Steel was on with us when I was in Pittsburgh, and he said they are actually seeing the benefits of the tariffs. Another listen.
I think you've heard that we've hired some 400 people here this year.
Right.
But for us, the key issue is really around national security. That's why this thing is so important. But you can see across the whole country the number of blue-collar jobs that have increased. I think it's the best blue-collar
next year. Will you hire more people next year?
We're hiring all the time.
Right, so they say they keep hiring. Steve Forbes is here, Forbes Media Chairman, but it brings up this larger point about whether it's more harm than good overall. We understand it's helping companies like his, and he explained that yesterday, but the overall impact seems like it's really being felt now. What do you see?
It is being felt because, yes, a few $1 billion, but that comes right off the bottom line.
Yeah.
Profit margins are being squeezed, and if these other tariffs go in early next year, they're going to be squeezed even more. And it's also CapEx, capital expenditures by business. If you don't know what the rules of the game are, you hold back. So it's affecting the economy as a whole far more than those few billions that are raised. And we should have learned from the early 2000s when the Bush administration, Bush 43, put in steel tariffs.
They backed out of them.
They had to back out of them because they cost 200,000 jobs in the overall economy.
It's interesting to see the government, as Edward was reporting a few minutes ago, essentially, I don't know if bragging is the right term, but openly talking about how much money the tariffs are bringing in. On the steel front, it's supposedly $4 billion. Overall, I think it's, $11 or $12 billion. But that's money somebody's paying for, right?
It's a tax. A tariff is a sales tax.
Yeah.
And so to boast, hey, we're raising taxes and raising more money, that ends up hurting the economy. And by the way, if they ever want to look back in history, Richard Nixon, his Treasury Secretary, a guy named John Connally, said the same thing. Oh, this is great because we collect all this money, sent the economy into a tailspin.
Well,
taxes, bad.
You're right.
They should have learned that.
Taxes equals not
bad.
good, right? So the idea here, though, has been, and many in the administration and those who defend the policies have said, he's really only, the president, setting this up to get everybody, particularly China, to the table, using it as a negotiating tactic. But when I talked to the U.S. Steel CEO yesterday, he had a different point of view on that. Here's what he said.
We don't see it as a negotiating tactic. We actually see these tariffs as being enduring for the foreseeable future.
To them, Steve, it's part of their business model in that industry now. They see it as they need this policy in order to make money. Others say, no, this will be negotiated away at some point. What do you think?
Well, if you're dependent on government tax money, bailouts as they used to be called, that's going to end up hurting innovation, and it's going to hurt the economy. And when you get capital expenditures, investment by businesses going down, who buys the steel? It's automakers, it's construction companies.
Right.
If they start to feel the pinch, guess what? Steel companies are going to feel it too.
Right, because in a bad economy, in a strong economy, it's one thing, but when the economy starts to slow, then it's obviously more challenging, right? But what do you think about the point about whether it is, big picture from this administration, really a, quote, negotiating tactic versus a semi-permanent or permanent policy?
If they want to make the point with China about trade abuses, they did it with Huawei by arresting her. They nearly did it with that other company, ZTE. They could have put them down a couple of months ago. You do that to a few major Chinese companies that are flouting the rules. You do that to a Chinese bank that's laundering money, kick them out of what they call the SWIFT system so they can't operate internationally anymore. That gets attention without hurting us.
That's interesting. You like that tactic. Some have criticized, but you say that's better than the tariffs.
That's better than hurting us with sales taxes, hurting American businesses, American consumers with sales taxes. So that's the way you get the message to China. And if you bring our allies in, the Europeans, instead of fighting them, then you have a strong front and China will respond.